Hi, I'm Tom and we're shooting today for Her Tribe TV at the Ragged School Museum in East London. This is my model Bori, and what I'm going to do on Bori's hair today is a really textured razor cut. The concept for this haircut came about when I was out shopping one day and I was approached by a shop assistant, and she had the cutest, prettiest haircut I'd seen in a long time. It was really strong, but there was something about it that was so nice, and it wasn't kind of contrived. You could tell a hairdresser hadn't cut it, and she said that she cuts it herself in a bathroom, and she literally grabs pieces of hair, chops it off, grabs pieces of hair, chops it off, and continually cuts it throughout the months. So I went back to the salon and set about kind of recreating this with a little bit more of a method, obviously, so I could kind of use it on a wide variety of people. So that's the haircut I'm going to do with Bori, and talk you through how I've kind of come up with this method. First thing I do is start just above the fringe and take a curved section, dropping right into just below the occipital bone in the nape. Again, I'm really trying to not be too precise and too neat, because the thing that was so great about this girl's haircut was the fact that it was so unhairdressery. It didn't have that thing of, you know, normally you can look at someone's hair and you say, well, I can see how they've done that, they've layered that, they've graduated that. It didn't have any of that, and that's what made it so good, I thought. Okay, so the only principle with this haircut is the angle of your razor. That's what I discovered after trying it quite a few times. So the angle of my razor always stays parallel to the angle of my section, because I want to create an even consistency of weight going around from the front hairline through to the occipital bone. Whereas if I go in straight, you can see what's going to happen. This will be too short and this will be too long. So I'm going to always keep my razor parallel, and what I do then is start to create a panel of weight that sits in nicely but keeps all this tenderly soft hair through the outline. So I'm going to come around here. I'm going to lift this out, making sure I'm still leaving the hairline out, because all the way through there we want to have that softness. So my razor is parallel to the hairline. Now I'm going to begin taking hair away. I want this weight line to sit right on line with the cheekbone. So that's why I don't want it to, if I cut it any shorter, it'll spike out and it'll start to have more of a mullety type look, and I don't want that. So my razor is parallel. I come out from the head, start to take the hair away. Being careful not to cut right through to the hairline. When doing razor cutting, it's all about the weight. It's all about how much you let your hand rest onto the hair. If you let it rest on too much and you've got a very sharp razor, it's just you're going to go straight through it. So it really is the weight and the pressure that you put on with your hands. Bori's got a really nice natural wave in her hair. What we've done is we've wet it down, applied a little bit of conditioner, and just let it dry naturally. And it's so important to do this haircut on the correct type of hair, because you know you don't want to be forcing it onto someone's hair that isn't ready for it, or it's not going to dry in a flattering way for them when they do it at home. So you can see I'm continuing through with that line. And you start to see now what happened. You're getting that shorter hair, and it's sitting on top of this kind of long little veil that's sitting on the face. I'm going to spin Bori around slightly. Now, as we come into here, my razor is still parallel to my section. You can see now how it starts to really make it sit in, presses all this hair onto the back of the neck. So it scoops out that head, and scoops out the shape at the back and gives a much more of a flattering line. It's important as well to always work with this spray, it's important as well to always work with a little bit of moisture throughout the hair. So after you've razored it, you can just spray that down And that'll then, as I'm cutting the rest of the hair, it'll dry in, and it'll dry in that new shape that you've created. And you can see my razor's still parallel to my section that I've taken. You start to see then that sits in and it just melts away into the thing. I'm going to leave the perimeter at the moment. I'm going to go through at the end and refine that. But I want to get the overall shape in first before I start going in, committing to any lines or length through the outline. So now you can see we have that weight line coming all the way through, starting sitting there and dropping into here. Okay. So I'm going to spin Bory back round. Again, same technique, curved line. Really trying and not be too disciplined. You know, obviously we, as hairdressers, we always get taught throughout our careers, you know, clean sections, balance, sharpness, make sure everything's evenly wet. This is something that I kind of really had to get out of my head when I wanted to do this haircut, because every time I did it like that, it looked like a hairdresser had cut it. It looked like it had a very uniform shape, and I could see what the way it had been created, and that is kind of the antithesis of what I wanted to create when I saw that girl's hair. Again, always just rest your razor as a little, I like to have a little checklist in my mind. Always rest your razor right on the parting, so then you know you're never going to come in square and create a line which we don't want. You're always going to be parallel to that section. And then bring it out when I want it to hit on the cheekbone. Being careful not to press too much. Better to have to go back in with the razor and have to press a little bit harder than wish you pressed too much. So you can see how that just sits in there, and then that nice wave just comes through. And that again, it goes back to picking the right model or the right client for this haircut, because if you get the right one straight away, it's going to sit in like that and you're going to have that nice shape. If you don't, it's going to fight against it, and you've forced a haircut onto that head of hair, which is not what you want to do. Okay, be particularly careful over the ear and just take a little bit of hair out and leave it. So always a little good to have a safety net because there isn't as much depth of hair. So I'm coming in, checking my line, checking my angle. Just come in one more time, a little bit tighter over the ear. So that parallel to the section. Every time. So scooping it at this point. So you can see that tightness sitting in there. Let's just spin all the way around and just check underneath that your middle bit isn't too heavy. So again, look at it, you know, really again, not trying to be neat with the section, just getting the hair out of the way. Okay, so we've got that rough outline in now. You can see the underneath is much flatter and it's got rid of all that bulk straight away. So now we repeat the technique through the top. So if you think about what we've created, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to go again, short, and then leaving that length over the top. So we're creating a very long undercut, if that makes sense. If all the hair was stood on end, you'd have it going from short to long, and then from the top, short to long. So again, keep my razor at the same angle. And so the top section is being kept a little bit longer because I want to hit the same point as that I hit from the underneath. Bring that there. Again, being careful not to press too hard, because we still want to keep this little length over the top. Like I said, it's better to have to go in and press a little bit more than wish you hadn't. So now we're starting to get a shortest texture shape in there. Again, keeping on this angle. And dropping that down to the back so it's a little bit heavier. Keeping with that line and scooping that shape out of there. So then you can see now how that's going to sitting in and coming out. Now the reason that I've decided to do 2 levels of this same shape is because when I was first working on this idea, I did it all from the top and shaped it out. And so I created a shape and cut it all the way through. But what I ended up with was kind of this like jellyfishy type of effect, because the top was so heavy that it was this very round shape and then some length. And it didn't have that, again, it looked like a hairdresser who cut it. It didn't have that freedom that the cut had that the lady in the shop had created. So what I found by doing 2 levels of the same cut, I created that shape, but I didn't have too much of a round bulbous shape at the top. And again, you know, I've got this principle of always keeping my razor at the same angle, but other than that, you know, you're going with your gut. And the only reason that you can do this, again, is because we've spent years cutting hair in a disciplined way, so you understand shape, you understand form, you understand what hair's going to do when you cut it at different angles and different lengths. So then it can let you go a little bit freer with a haircut like this. So it might look kind of undisciplined, and it is undisciplined, but you can only do it because you've worked with the discipline for a long time. I'm just stepping back, looking at the shape and looking at the form, making sure. Okay, so just following round into the fringe, I want to open up Bori's face a little bit. You can see the hair just kind of drowning the cheekbones out. She's got nice eye sockets, nice cheekbones. So it needs everything to be opened up a little bit. So all I'm going to do, the fringe is very round at the moment. It's got this shape, and I want it to have a kind of more of a melted away, that's more of an inverted shape. So I'm just going to pick up the hair, not take anything off the length. Spin around so you can see a little bit more. And again, I'm really trying to not make it look too hairdressery, so that's why I'm not taking a section with a comb. I'm just wanting to get some like shorter lengths and some longer lengths. when coming up with this cut, obviously it took a lot of trial and error and a lot of ruining a lot of expensive blocks at the salon, and but I had to keep going through that process to get to this cut that you've seen today. But obviously our head of education, Tiziana, who runs the budget for these blocks, was charging around the salon trying to find out who had been razoring all these lines and shaving all these heads at blocks that I've been hiding all over the salon. But hopefully she won't see this video, because you see it's just much nicer and just much more open on Bori's fringe now. Just going to open up just a little bit around the front. And at this point, you know, I'm kind of just cutting with my feeling of how I feel like the hair's sitting against Bori's face shape. And that's all it is. Hair cutting is just distribution of weight in different areas. You know, you add texture to something, you put in shorter hair that presses down into the longer hair and creates a shadow, and that's texture, really. That's why the light hits it as an uneven surface and creates texture. And when you think of it like that, it helps you understand how to do a cut like this much more. Take a little bit more from here. Okay, what I'm going to do now, because again, I don't want this to look like a hairdresser's done it, and I'm scared if I go through with product, I'm a hairdresser, I'm not going to be able to resist myself, and I'm going to start moving things around and making it look all too fixed. So Bori, he's going to have a tiny bit of this on her hand. Yeah. And then flip your head over and put it all the way through your hair from the ends right to the tip. From the roots right the way through to the tip. And rough it up a little bit. Don't be too scared with it or too gentle. Okay, flip your head back. Thank you. And I'm just going to dry that in a little bit. And that was just a small amount of conditioner. I didn't want anything too sticky or something that was going to make it look too set, but the conditioner is just going to take any fluffiness out of the ends. And the last thing I'm going to do is just refine the shape a little bit through the front, because I like some of these shorter pieces just coming out onto there. And I think that's, you know, that inspiration or an idea can come from anywhere really. It's just about always having that antenna up a little, you know, when you're walking around. It could be a texture, it could be one of the wooden floors in here, or a colour pattern that you'll see in one of the desks. And it's the everyday life, I think, is the best source of ideas and inspiration, or whatever you want to call it. Much better than looking through a magazine or looking at something like that. I think, you know, if we're looking at all that stuff, we're probably going to be copying, because most other people are looking at that stuff as well. But I think your everyday life, that's where you can find an idea that maybe is a little bit more original. I'm just going to spin Bori around. I'm just going to add a little bit of texture into the top here. there we go. So you can see we have that weight line, that very kind of faint weight line, all the way through the underneath. It's scooped out the back, got a little bit of texture in the top, just so it sets it off quite nicely through there. And then through here, we've just opened up Bori's facial features and bone structure by shaping this haircut away. So as you can see, the nice eyes and like that. And then she has all the shorter texture on the top. And you've seen, I just sprayed it, let it dry naturally, she put some conditioner through it, and that's just the kind of worst it'll ever look, which is exactly what you want, because tomorrow morning she's going to be able to do the exact same thing and still style it. So thank you very much for watching Hair Tribe TV, and I hope you like my haircut inspiration based around someone cutting their own hair. Thank you very much.